so that, and I think, yeah, that's going on. So, right, welcome again. If you're just joining us to this Q&A webinar for the TANZ West Northants project. So this is a project that is being delivered by SLIPAH, the Sustainability Local Innovation Partnership Agenda Hub. It's a hub that sits within the University of Northampton, particularly within the Centre for Sustainable Business Practices. And I've got a few colleagues from the university on here, and I'm sure they would have introduced themselves in the chat box. If you're just joining us, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box by stating your name and the organization that you represent. This project is being run in partnership, in direct partnership with West Northamptonshire Council. I don't know whether Martin is on the call yet, but he's due to join us at some point. But we're working closely with Martin Wilson and Jolie as well from the council on this project. And it is, of course, funded by the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. A lot of people would know that as the sort of the Levelling Up fund. And of course, that's the resource that is funding this project. And so what I'd like to do with the next sort of 20 to 30 minutes or so is to just very briefly explain the key details around the project. So first, the project overview and the project team, key project objectives and timelines, and then to also talk about what the benefits are. That will just be a one slide sort of benefit map that we've put together, which I'll be happy to share. And then finally, how to get started. So how to get involved in this project. And then, of course, there will be a sort of a Q&A sort of at the end. But of course, as I said before, we're very happy for colleagues to put any immediate questions that come to them as I'm going through the different slides in the chat box, and my colleague Armin will be on hand to respond to those questions. So just before we get onto the detail proper, a bit of background to sort of track our journey so far and where we are. So you would all recall that we had the University of Northampton Sustainability Summit in May of this year. It seems like it was ages ago, but it only happened in May of this year. And at that summit, of course, we came together as a stakeholder group to identify shared sustainability challenges, and we did that over a period of 2 days in May of this year. And that process led directly to the agreement of the Northampton Sustainability Accord. And within that accord, we set out the sustainability challenges that we had identified, which we said was shared and common to all of us. But we also set out a set of sustainability challenges. And that was the whole point of the summit. It was for us to come together to identify our shared sustainability challenges, but in addition to that, to also develop and devise the beginnings of a framework by which we could address those shared sustainability challenges. And you would all recall when we met during the summit that a lot of our discussions was around action. We said we wanted to take action. We said we're tired of talking. We said we didn't want the summit to be simply just a talk shop. We wanted to really get down to the doing. And we wanted to have actionable, concrete steps that we would take to address those shared sustainability challenges. And that's effectively what we set out in the Northampton Sustainability Accord, which we agreed to on the 16th of May, 2023. Within the Northampton Sustainability Accord, we provided the means for the setting up of a research, enterprise and knowledge exchange hub, which we refer to as SLIPAH, the Sustainability Local Innovation Partnership Agenda Hub. And within the accord, we agreed that SLIPAH would have the mandate to coordinate and to really undertake all of the research, the knowledge exchange, the enterprise activities that are required to deliver on the sustainability goals set out in the Northampton Sustainability Accord. And so in line with our desire for action and our desire not just to say that we're going to do things, but to actually get on and do them and deliver them, we launched SLIPAH on the 18th of July. And you'd all recall the lovely launch that we had when we had a sort of a networking barbecue with food provided by our friends at Eat Curious and CN Farms. And it was a fantastic sort of afternoon in the summertime in July. Once SLIPAH was launched, we immediately started scoping out projects and bids. We started writing a number of bids, and all of that was to ensure that we're actively and very quickly pursuing the shared sustainability goals that are set out in the Northampton Sustainability Accord. And of course, this took place over the summer. So between July and August 2023, we did a lot of work putting bids together, scoping out different projects, etc., etc. And all of that work is what has culminated in the TANZ project, for instance, and the launching of other initiatives, which we launched in September of this year, just last month. And all of this is to advance the goals that we've set out in the Northampton Sustainability Accord. So, ladies and gentlemen, in a short 4 or 5 months, I'm sure you can see the progress that we've made, and at an accelerated pace. Very, very fast moving, very, very encouraging, very, very inspiring. And I think it shows for us as a local stakeholder group that we can get things done when we come together and we work together and we actively pursue our shared goals. And so this project and the other initiatives that we're running within SLIPAH is a legacy of all of this work that we've done together from May up until this point. So that's the background to this. So moving on, in terms of the TANZ project specifically, just a few things to point out on the project overview. The acronym TANZ stands for Towards a Net Zero West Northamptonshire. And I've already mentioned that it is funded by the UKSPF. It is a 2-year project, which of course means that the burden for engaging with the project for businesses, the burden or in terms of engaging with the project for SMEs and charities is drawn out over a long period of time. And obviously, we'll talk a little bit more about what that means specifically. A lot of the ask or the demand that will be placed on participating businesses and charities on this project is going to be mainly around time. Because of course, the project is free for you to be a part of, and there's going to be lots of benefits that are going to be derived as well. So it's going to be mainly a time constraint, but we've mitigated that significantly and severely by ensuring that because it's a 2-year project, we're able to draw it out and to ensure that we take small bites of it rather than huge chunks of it to make it such that it's a kind of project that we can get on and deliver and have everybody involved and bring everyone along as well. Just to introduce you to the core project team that are working on this. Of course, there is myself, and I'll introduce my other colleagues, some of whom are on the call, but some of whom are not able to make it because they're engaged with other commitments. But this is the core project team that's working on this. So there is myself, Dr. Ebenezer Lai. I'm an associate professor at the University of Northampton, and I am leading on this project. Alongside myself in a co-project lead capacity is my colleague, Professor Amin Hosseinian Farr. He's one of our distinguished professors at the university, and he is a professor of systems thinking and co-project lead. Amin has expertise within sustainability, especially on the environmental side, but not just limited to the environmental side, but also on the social side of sustainability as well. And then also on the project team, we've got my colleague, Dr. Chijioke Uba. Dr. Uba is a senior lecturer in international business. He has expertise in the area of sustainability, particularly he has very strong expertise in looking at SMEs and how SMEs, of course, approach sustainability. And he is going to be providing support on the research and knowledge exchange delivery within the project. Next to him, we've also got my colleague, Dr. Shay Omolosho, whom I believe is on the call. Shay is a senior lecturer in sustainable business. In addition to that, Shay also has considerable expertise within leather, particularly, and his PhD focused on leather as a sustainable material. And he's going to be supporting us on the research and knowledge exchange delivery as well. And then we've got Simon Derrick, who is a fellow, a visiting fellow at the University of Northampton. He is also the head of sustainability, the global head of sustainability at Blue Skies. But he's also a net zero expert, and he's founder of the Sustainable Business Alliance. And so Simon is, of course, an external consultant that we've brought in to support us on this project. The Sustainable Business Alliance that he has founded and heads is the technical implementation partner, or one of the technical implementation partners for SLIPAH. And we rely on them for technical support. And obviously they feed in with their expertise into our projects and other activities that SLIPAH runs. And so that's Simon. And then finally, last but not least, we've got my colleague, Dr. Dilshad Sawa. She sends her apologies. She's unable to be here at the moment. But Dr. Dilshad Sawa is an associate professor, and she is also the head of our business systems and operations subject group within the Faculty of Business and Law at the university. And she's going to be supporting on the research and knowledge exchange delivery on this project as well. And so moving on to talk about the key project objectives, a number of them. Number one, one of the main objectives of this project is to raise awareness about net zero, to provide, number two, research and knowledge exchange support on emissions reductions. Of course, all through the county, all through the region, there will be different businesses at different levels in terms of their net zero journey. But we want to make sure that this project serves everyone, regardless of where you are in that journey. So you might be a business where you don't even know where to start. Well, this project is for you. You might be a business that is you've made a start, and you are sort of in a not at an advanced level, but an intermediary level in your journey. This project is for you. And even if you're at an advanced stage in your sustainability journey or your net zero journey, this project is for you as well. I want to provide that research and knowledge exchange support, to help on emissions reduction. So covering things like, how do you measure your emissions? Scope 1 and scope 2, scope 3 emissions, what are those? What sorts of data can you be collecting, to keep an eye on your emissions? And how do you even organize that data? So all of these bits of subject matter, which sort of form the basis of a net zero approach, will be covered on this project, and we'll be providing the support to help you get there. As part of this project, we're also developing an open source, readily available carbon calculator, and this is going to be a core element of the project. We are making very, very good progress on the development of this. It's already started. and we're working quite hard to ensure that obviously we develop something that is bespoke and meets the needs of the local stakeholder group that has formed around the Accord and around SLIPAH, etc. And so we will, of course, be providing updates as we go along in this project on that particular front. This is going to be open source, meaning that you wouldn't have to pay for it. But of course, to use it initially, you're going to have to be part of the project because we will be feeding in your thoughts and sort of perceptions around the calculator to help sort of to shape it and to develop it. And so if you're on the call and you have not yet joined the project, of course, I'll be talking about how you can do that later on. Please do so because, of course, you have access to this carbon calculator that is in development. We expect for the development to be completed very early in the new year, 2024. So ideally, looking between between January and March 2024, most likely by February, we should be at a state where it's developed so that we can deploy it in line with the project timeline. The next key objective is to achieve quantifiable emissions reduction. So what we're going to be doing is not only providing the research and knowledge exchange to help businesses and charities taking part in this project to understand their carbon emissions, but with the development of the carbon calculator, what we're going to be doing is to helping you to use the carbon calculator to measure your emissions. And then we're going to help you to action plan and to understand the results that the carbon calculator gives you, and then to take the steps to reduce those emissions. And then once you've taken the steps, we will support you to use the carbon calculator again to measure those emissions. At which point we hope that we would see, or you would be able to see, quantifiable emissions reductions. So we have a sort of a before and after, if you think about it that way. You would measure your carbon emissions using a calculator once the development is completed. And then once we've taken you through the process of interpreting the results, helping you to action plan, and helping you to take those steps in your action plan, you would then, of course, measure your emissions again, and you should see a fall in those emissions. And then finally, all of this sort of culminated or brought together, we want to generate demonstrable momentum for achieving a drive, right, to attain the collective net zero goals that the West Northamptonshire Council has to attain net zero by 2045, but also the UK government goal of attaining net zero by 2050. Right. So the project timeline, just to talk you through that a little bit, and of course, as I'm going through this, I know there will be questions, and that can be saved for the end of the presentation, or if you want to put those in the chat box, my colleague Armin is on hand to respond to those questions. So we split up the project timeline into different activities. So activity 1 is where we are currently, and all put together, that will take about 7 months. So there are a number of things that will, that will happen concurrently. So we're in the process of a stakeholder analysis at the moment and onboarding, right? Businesses and charities. We want to engage over 100 businesses and charities on this project. That is ambitious, but I believe we can do it. And so, that is the goal. And in doing so, in order to achieve that, we're undertaking a stakeholder analysis. That includes a stakeholder mapping. And of course, the onboarding involves other activities like communication, right, and promotional activities and outreach. So those of you on this call, you've been getting a lot of emails from us. around the project, how to get involved, etc., etc. And we're hoping that all of that culminates into a very, very, very good, significant number of registrations. We're also in the process of undertaking a baseline survey and assessment and needs assessment. So we will be coming back to all businesses and charities who've registered for this project, to put a survey to, because we want to understand where you are at the moment in terms of your own net zero journey, and where you feel you would like the most help. And so we'll be coming back to you with a survey. And then in addition to that, within this sort of this 7 months, we want to undertake a series of introductory webinars where we are talking about the basics of net zero, what it means, what it entails, etc., etc. So building from the bottom up, if you like. Hence why I said initially that if you're sort of at a stage in your business, or if you're a charity and you don't even know where to start, this project is for you as well, because we'll be sort of putting in those fundamental foundational blocks. Running concurrently with activity 1, we've got the activity 2, which is around the carbon calculator development. So that's ongoing at the moment. The duration for this is roughly 7 to 9 months, and we're making enormous strides in relation to this. We expect the carbon calculator the development to be completed sometime between January and March. And then, of course, there will be the deployment. And then in terms of activity 3, we've got what we're referring to as the phase 1 workshops. So these are workshops that will come after the introductory webinars, that we have on the project timeline to undertake. So we're thinking about 3 introductory webinars in all. Then in the summer of next year, we've got the phase 1 workshops, and these workshops will focus on specifically the detail of how you use the calculator. Particularly, we will also cover a lot of significant detail on carbon emissions and carbon emission measurement, particularly. And so all of that will happen in this workshop in activity 3. And then activity 4 will focus on phase 2 workshops. So that will entail support within the workshops on emissions calculations. So within the calculator, having understood in phase 1 how you sort of wrap your head around carbon emission measurement and carbon emission measurement strategies, how do you sort of bring that into the carbon calculator? And we'll cover that in the phase 2 workshop, which will be in sort of in the summer next year as well. And then activity 5, we've got the phase 3 workshops, where we will be providing support on emissions, the carbon calculator emissions results. So how do you interpret those results that the carbon calculator is giving you? What do they mean, right? And how should you perceive them? And within that workshop, we'll also be providing support on action planning. Now that you've gotten the results of your carbon emissions, what should you do next? And how can you action plan? What steps do you need to take? We'll be providing that support as well. In addition to that, we'll also be generating a macro picture of the emissions report. So we'll be pulling together all the different emissions reports that have been generated to produce an overall picture of what the emissions are looking like within our geographical location. And that will be significant, because it will help for all businesses and charities who are taking part in this project to see sort of that cumulative effect of the emissions, and then to also better understand how emissions reductions, right, being seriously pursued by all of us, can help to reduce overall emissions and how that can make a difference. And then moving on to activity 6, once we've helped you to do your action planning, and once you've actually taken the steps to put those plans into motion, we will come back and help you to re-engage with the calculator to measure your emissions again. And this is where you should be able to see a fall in those emissions. And then activity 7 is around the final workshop. This is a final workshop to sort of end the project on the practical side of things, at least. And within this workshop, we'll be sharing best practice, reporting progress, and also we will be talking about identifying support resources. So one of the plans that we have around this project is to have a legacy support mechanism in place so that businesses and charities can still benefit from knowledge exchange and research support even after this project has ended, to ensure that there is that continued advancement to attain net zero. And then activity 8 is one for us in the project team to undertake, which is a dissemination and reporting to conclude the project. So we will produce a final report. We will publish this report for all to see at the end of the project. And that report will obviously include some analysis on the impact of the project. So a few sort of things to note in terms of the project milestones. So these are the milestones that we have at the moment. I do, however, want to mention that there are others. There are other milestones to come, which we've not been able to include in here because we've not necessarily agreed the dates for these yet, but the dates will be agreed and they'll be communicated. So of course, today we're having the Q&A webinar. And then the next sort of milestone, or the next sort of gathering, will be in November. So November 2023, November 14th specifically, where we'll be having the first Net Zero webinar. This will be hosted by Max from Beanstalk. Those of you at the summit, you will remember Max. He was the chap who came around during the summit to sort of do all the video shooting and to host for the different interviews, etc., etc. So the details on how to register for this webinar will be on the SLIPAH website, and we'll communicate that. So that will be the first Net Zero webinar. And then in December of this year, we will have a waste management workshop. This is, of course, related to the project. And what we want to do is, in addition to talking about carbon emissions, we also want to talk about other things like waste management and sustainable water use as well. Because once we get to that stage where you've measured your emissions using a carbon calculator and we're into action planning, for some businesses, for some charities, it might be that a way to reduce your emissions might possibly entail that waste is organized better. So the carbon calculator has a waste management element, or sort of an element of it that takes into account the waste that is being generated within the business or within your organizational setup as a charity. And so we want to make sure that we're providing knowledge exchange support for waste management as well. And so the first waste management workshop is slated for December the 5th. And this will be delivered by our lovely colleagues at CIWM. CIWM are, of course, a signatory organization to the Northampton Sustainability Accord. And of course, they were also at the summit in May. And so they will be sort of delivering this waste management workshop and providing concrete knowledge exchange around waste management. That will be on December the 5th for that particular workshop. In January, we will have the second Net Zero webinar. The date is to be confirmed, and we will publish that as soon as we've got the dates ready. And then the third Net Zero webinar will take place in March of 2024. And then in July of 2024, we'll have the first, the phase 1 workshop that I just talked about in terms of the project timeline. October 2024, date to be confirmed. Phase 2 workshops. November 2024, phase 3 workshops. And then the final workshop will take place in March 2025. Again, the date to be confirmed. The other project milestones that I've not got on here, which of course I need to raise your attention to, is the workshops around sustainable water use, because that's the other thing that we're looking at as part of this project. So we want to provide knowledge exchange support for waste management, but also for sustainable water use, in addition to what we're providing for carbon emissions. And so we have not yet agreed the dates, for that. We're working with one of the local businesses within the county who are keen to deliver those workshops, working together with us. And so we will obviously communicate that. But you can see from the project milestones in terms of the dates that we have here, I beg your pardon, sorry to take you back to this slide. You can see we're limiting ourselves to one, maximum of one workshop a month, or one sort of session a month, and that is done intentionally to try and limit sort of the burden, right, and the time factor on businesses and charities, to make sure that this is something that you can engage with, and you, of course, you have the time to give to this. Right, moving on. So this is our benefits map, right? Growth map, and it's a map which pretty much sets out what the benefits are for you and for all businesses and charities that will be part of this project. And for us, the key thing, what we're saying, is that we are highly confident that engaging with this project will lead to growth in your business, and growth in your operations as a business and as a charity. And I just want to explain how that works. So we've got at the middle here, growth via TANZ. And being part of TANZ means that there are commercial benefits, right? The commercial benefits, number one, is in the area of cost savings, because obviously embracing this project means that you are able to reduce your carbon emissions, and you're able to improve your resource efficiency, and your business or charity, as a result of that, can significantly cut its operational costs. And this translates into real tangible savings that can enhance your bottom line and make your business more financially robust, more competitive, right? So that is the cost savings there. Enhanced reputation is another commercial benefit, right? By being part of this project, you are able to position yourself as a leader within not just West Northamptonshire, but Northamptonshire generally, when it comes to sustainability. And of course, seeing as this is a transformative project, by being part of it, you're demonstrating your commitment to sustainability, which of course enhances your own reputation as a business or as a charity, and that can translate to a number of things, including customer loyalty, attracting socially conscious consumers who prefer to engage with businesses that actively are working towards a much greener and resilient future. Right, so that's the enhanced reputation bit, and that has commercial benefits, and of course, the being part of this project means that you have the access to expert resources and collaboration, because you can link up with other like-minded businesses as well. And you can see the arrows here. All of these benefits lead to growth. Then there's also the community leadership aspect. There is the opportunity for you, as being part of this project, to have a positive impact on the community, to have local recognition and trust, which is very, very important, especially in this day and age where there's, the commercial landscape is very challenging if you're a business, but also, of course, if you're a charity, the third sector voluntary landscape is also not without challenges. So local recognition and trust can help, and this project and you're being part of it helps you to achieve that. And then also strengthen local partnerships, which is extremely extremely important, right? Because this project and you're being part of it creates the opportunities for your business or charity to collaborate with local organizations, local community groups, obviously local government authorities such as West Northants Council, and obviously your participation demonstrates your commitment to working together with others towards a common goal, and obviously the common goals that are set out under the Northampton Sustainability Accord. There's also research support. This is obviously one of the other things that leads to growth as well, which this project offers. So you're going to get expert guidance and delivery. You're also going to get access to tools and materials such as the carbon calculator. And for those of us who are on here, if you're a business and you've at one point in time tried to get sort of access to these, one of these carbon calculators that are on there on the market, you find that they're extremely expensive, to have and to sign up for and to use. And by being part of this project, of course, what you will be getting is an open source, readily available carbon calculator, which is free. And of course, you're going to get the support, not just to understand how to use it, but to also understand the results that it is giving you. And then finally, there's also the networking and practical applications benefits, which of course, again, lead to growth for your business or growth in your operations as a charity and efficiency. So of course, you've got the collaboration opportunities that I talked about, but very importantly, the sharing of best practices, right? Learning from other businesses and what they're doing in the workshops. And we're going to provide the opportunities for this sort of sharing of best practice to happen in the workshops, because it provides a way for you to get tips from other colleagues who are in other businesses, or on how challenges that you're facing when it comes to net zero or carbon emissions, or any other related issues, how those can be overcome. And then finally, action planning, right? Receiving the support, which says, well, this is what your emissions look like, and getting the help for you to actually put a plan together, a strategy together of what you can do about that is very, very, very important. So you're going to get that as well. And then also there's the legacy support, right? So after the project is finished in 2025, you're not going to be left high and dry. You're going to get a legacy mechanism that is put in place and resources that are there to help you to continue your net zero journey and to progress that journey towards the attainment of net zero, and to maintain that net zero attainment well into the future. And that's something we'll be talking about in a lot more detail. So all of this, when you look at this benefits map, it is about growth, real tangible growth in your business, real tangible growth in your operations as a charity, growth that you will feel in your bottom line, and that you will observe in your operations, growth that is evident, not growth that is merely sort of talked about. And that is the main benefit that we are highlighting here, which we are confident will accrue to you and your organization as you take part in this project. So after all of that, how to get started? it's a very simple process. If you'd like to be part of this project, simply go to our website, www.slipah.co.uk, and SLIPAH is spelled SLIPAH, slipah.co.uk, and then click on projects and initiatives, and you will see listed on there towards a Net Zero West Northants, and you will come, clicking on that will bring you to the project page. And when you scroll further down all the way to the bottom of the project page, you see this very simple form that you can fill out. Your first name, last name, organization name, email address, and phone number, and then just submit that. And once you do that, that's it. You're registered for the for the project, and it's as simple as that. And once you register, of course, we will then have your details within our records, and we will be getting in touch with you from then on. So that's it. I did promise that it was going to be sort of a short PowerPoint sort of presentation. I hope your feeling is that I kept to my promise. And now it's time for the Q&A. So I'd like to open the floor for any questions and answers. I beg your pardon, questions, yes, and answers as well, about the project and about any of the details that we've just shared. The floor is open. Yeah, please go ahead, Armin.
Yeah, thanks, Ebenezer, and good morning, everyone. I do not have a question. Just wanted to add one additional point, that there's no cost to businesses or charities by being part of this project. So it's completely free. It requires a few hours of commitment in terms of attending the workshops, and of course some commitment when you take away the calculator to your business or organization and start assessing the operations and your practices within the business. So yeah, that's all, Ebenezer. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Armin. And so yeah, that's that is apt and accurate. No cost at all. It's just a matter of time being given to this. And what we've done is we've really done our best to try and stretch this out so that that burden of time that you have to commit to this is at a very, very, very minimum sort of level. And so we hope and are confident that I will make it such that it's a project that can be accommodated. Yes, Sharon, to answer your question, I think, yes, you are registered, and I think NEN Group is registered as well. Yes, Dave, please go ahead.
I got a couple of questions. Does this project include support for policy advocacy, or is it only on reducing emissions and water quality?
Yes, thanks, Dave. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. It's the policy advocacy is we're going to have that as well. So that's not one of the key objectives, but it will be one of the natural consequences which flow from the project. Because you might recall, as I shared in the slides, at the end of the project, we're going to put out this report, and that report is going to have some analysis of the impact of the project, but that analysis will also include sort of a synopsis of what some of the challenges are that we experience in delivering this project, and what some of the challenges are for the businesses and charities that took part in this particularly. And so what we're hoping is that, of course, that will feed into the council's future plans and thinking around net zero, but also as academics, we would want to push that further to inform policy generally in a UK sort of government format specifically, on how we progress towards net zero. And of course, everybody here knows what's been happening around net zero politically over the next the last 2 to 3 months, where it's sort of almost become a bit of a political football. And of course, projects like these are important because it provides evidence which can help to better shape the policy beyond the politics. So yeah, absolutely, we're going to have that policy aspect as well.
And I have a follow-up question, if I may. So you've been talking about charities. I'm part of Clean Air Northampton, which is a policy advocacy group for improving air quality in West Northants. But we only formed in February, and we're not a registered charity. We don't have any legal status. Would we fit within your criteria for a participant organisation, or would we need to register as a charity in order to do that?
Yes, thanks for that question, Dave. You can still take part in the project. My guess is that you would you'll have it in your plans to register as a charity at some point. But seeing as you are an organization newly formed, and I take it that you're already doing some work within the county, and so of course we would welcome your involvement as an unincorporated association. Legally, that is the sort of the legal form that you take if you're not a registered business or a registered charity. You're an unincorporated association. So yes, we would welcome your involvement as an unincorporated association, and we'll be willing to work alongside you, but also alongside any organizations to which you are affiliated, to support you through this project.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you again for that, Dave. Camilla is asking, do you give evaluation, do an audit of each organization has performed? Yes, Camilla. So the emissions reports that will be generated from the use of the carbon calculator will help us to provide some kind of evaluation. But this will be provided to each organization individually. It's not something that will be shared sort of publicly. So the only thing that will be shared publicly is the macro sort of picture, really, in terms of the what the emissions picture looks like when you put all of the emissions together within West Northamptonshire, within Northamptonshire generally, and we will publish that. But individually to each organisation, there will be some kind of evaluation of performance, and what we want to see, particularly for each organisation, is that drop, in emissions at the end of the project, right? So as I said, we're measuring emissions once the carbon calculator development has completed, and then we action plan. You take the steps in your action plan, and then you measure again after those steps have been completed. And the hope is that there will be sort of a drop in emissions, and that is one of the key goals of the project. So I do hope that answers the question, Camilla. I think it's Hannah who's asking this question, although it's posted by Sharon. Hannah is asking, what are your goals, for the project? Yeah. So thank you for that question, Hannah. So it's what I just described. Particularly, yes, we want to see that drop in carbon emissions, but we also want to see by the end of the project, all the organizations that have taken part in it well positioned to continue that net zero journey. So continue that journey towards attaining net zero. For some organizations, you might find that you've attained net zero within the 2 years of the project, and that's fine. For others, probably not. The goal is to make sure that we provide the support to position organizations such that they are able to continue that journey, towards net zero. And in terms of what we plan to do next, our hope is that the success of this project will unlock further funding for us to be able to draw on the resources of that funding to help businesses to transition much more permanently to green technologies. We are confident in prayer that that will happen. The funders that we're working with, and of course the council as well, are confident that if the project is successful, that provides the means to unlock this further funding. That's not guaranteed at this stage, and we have to obviously work together, all of us, to ensure that the project is successful. But if it does, then it means that obviously that funding is there is the potential for it to be unlocked for transition and to support that transition to much greener sort of technologies, especially if it is the case that for a particular business that transition might be costly. We want to unlock that funding to support those businesses and charities to make that transition. And so basically that's what we're thinking of in terms of next steps. And Vicky's asking, can businesses that fall within North Northamptonshire have access to this program, or use this to support West Northamptonshire businesses? Thank you for that question, Vicky. The short answer is yes. But of course, seeing as the funding, and the scope of this is West Northamptonshire related, of course, we are, how should I put this? We are prioritizing businesses in West Northamptonshire. So what that means is that we've got a cap of 150 businesses. So we're looking to engage over 100 businesses and charities, but we've got an ultimate cap of 150. So if that cap is reached, then of course we would be prioritizing West Northamptonshire businesses in relation to that particularly. But the short answer to your question is yes. Businesses that fall within North Northamptonshire can receive support as well, under the auspices of SLIPAH. And we've had some North Northamptonshire businesses that have already registered, and so yeah, absolutely, Vicky, happy for you to to sort of register, and sort of getting there before we start getting towards that cap and have to begin sort of prioritizing. Yeah. I hope that answers the question, Vicky. Any other sort of thoughts, any questions, any comments at all? No? Right. Then on that basis, it leaves me only to say thank you very much for joining us for this webinar. The next of the webinar will be obviously the Net Zero, the first Net Zero webinar, and this will take place on the 14th of November. We will communicate the details via the usual channels, and so please keep an eye for that. And lastly, I'll just want to thank everyone again for being part of this journey. We're on a very exciting journey. It's only been 4 months that we were sat together at the summit, enjoying the different discussions that were going on, enjoying the lovely food, enjoying the camaraderie as well, and we set out to really begin working together to address our shared sustainability challenges. We wanted to move beyond the talk, and it's really exciting that we're doing that. And it takes all of us to continue in that process. And so I want to thank everyone in advance for your continued participation and support. We would ask that you help us to reach other businesses and charities within West Northamptonshire, Northamptonshire generally, that we can't reach because we don't know them yet, but you know them because you might be affiliated to them. Please pass on the details of this project, the details of SLIPAH to them, and we will be very, very grateful for that indeed. So thank you very much again, and yeah, look forward to seeing you on the 14th of November for the Net Zero webinar. Thank you so much. Cheers, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Ebenezer. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.